Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in Radha Lane, in the Sannyasi Quarters Library, with a room full of spiritual seekers and Rasika devotees, devotees that have a taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna. It's actually the goal of life. And it's the means to get the goal of life at the same time. It's mystical. Oh, Sarv, I was beginning to worry that we won't be able to be with you.
Yes, nice voice from San Antonio.
Well, Hare Krishna. The San Antonio yatra has arrived. The spiritual seekers are coming in from all corners of the universe, waiting, ready to hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Welcome. This is the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. It goes on every single day, no matter what, except if I'm on a long haul flight and I can't do it. Other than that, every single day for the last 5 years, it's been going on. Yes. And it's starting to get pretty tasty. Maharaj, Haribol, Giridhar Swami is here. Now we can start. Welcome to all of you out in cyberspace. And we're going to start by reciting our daily recitation of the prayers by Sanatana Goswami to Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is full of mystic realizations. So listen carefully with your heart. It goes like this. Sarva Shastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Vedanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Doditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. Let's move up let's move up closer, because nobody can come and sit on the couch. I know you guys are brahmacharis, you don't know what couches are, but some people, they need to sit on a couch. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. O life heir of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhika Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin adini chochatakara hanamunchagadachenmam premna ritkantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Sounds especially meaningful because it was the mantra that Dhruva Maharaj was given by Narada Muni. Hare Krishna. Patricia. Hare Krishna. I'm going to start calling you Bhaktin Patricia. What?
Her name is Janaki.
No, Patricia Janaki. Right? That's why they call you Dr. Janaki, right? Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay, here we are. Canto 4, Chapter 9, starting with Chapter 30, Text 32. Dhruva Maharaj is offering his prayers to the Lord. 5 years old, having been practicing Bhakti Yoga for only 6 months. And he's seeing the Lord face to face and offering him prayers. Since all the demigods who are situated in the higher planetary systems will have to come down again, they are all envious of my being elevated to Vaikuntha Loka by devotional service. Though these intolerant demigods have dissipated my intelligence, and only for this reason could I not accept the genuine benediction of the instructions of sage Narada. Purport. As shown by many instances in the Vedic literature, when a person undergoes severe austerities, the demigods become very much perturbed because they are always afraid of losing their posts as the predominating deities of the heavenly planets. It is known to them that their position in the higher planetary system is impermanent, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, Chine, Punje, Marchalokam, Vishanti. It is said in the Gita that after exhausting the results of their pious activities, all the demigods who are inhabitants of the higher planetary system have to come back again to this earth. It is a fact that the demigods control the different activities of the limbs of our bodies. Factually, we are not free even in moving our eyelids. Everything is controlled by them. Dhruva Maharaja's conclusion is that these demigods, being envious of his superior position in devotional service, conspired against him to pollute his intelligence. And thus, although he was the disciple of a great Vaishnava, Narada Muni, he could not accept Narada's valid instructions. Now, Dhruva Maharaj regretted very much that he had neglected these instructions. Narada Muni had asked him, "Why should you bother about insult or adoration from your stepmother?" He, of course, said to Dhruva Maharaj that since Dhruva was only a child, what did he have to do with such insult or adoration? But Dhruva Maharaj was determined to achieve the benediction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore Narada advised him to go back home for the time being, and in a mature time he could try to practice devotional service. Dhruva Maharaj regretted that he had rejected the advice of Narada Muni and was adamant in asking him for something perishable, namely revenge against his stepmother for her insult and possession of the kingdom of his father. Dhruva Maharaj regretted very much that he could not take seriously the instruction of his spiritual master, and that his consciousness was therefore contaminated. Still, the Lord is so merciful that due to Dhruva's execution of devotional service, he offered Dhruva the ultimate Vaishnava goal. Text 33. Dhruva Maharaj lamented, "I was under the influence of the illusory energy. Being ignorant of the actual facts, I was sleeping on her lap. Under a vision of duality, I saw my brother as an enemy, and falsely I lamented within my heart, thinking, they are my enemies." Purport. Real knowledge is revealed to a devotee only when he comes to the right conclusion about life by the grace of the Lord. Our creation of friends and enemies within this material world is something like dreaming at night. In dreams, we create so many things out of various impressions in the subconscious mind. But all such creations are simply temporary and unreal. In the same way, although apparently we are awake in material life, because we have no information of the soul and the supersoul, we create many friends and enemies simply out of imagination. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that within this material world, or material consciousness, good and bad are the same. The distinction between good and bad is simply a mental concoction. The actual fact is that all living entities are sons of God or byproducts of His marginal energy. Because of our being contaminated by the modes of material nature, we distinguish one spiritual spark from another. That is also another kind of dreaming. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that those who are actually learned do not make any distinction between a learned scholar, a brahmana, an elephant, a dog, and a chandala. They do not see in terms of the external body. Rather, they see the person as spirit soul. By higher understanding, we can know that the material body is nothing but a combination of the 5 material elements. In that sense also, the bodily construction of a human being and that of a demigod are one and the same. From the spiritual point of view, we are all spiritual sparks, parts and parcels of the Supreme Spirit, God. Either materially or spiritually, we are basically one, but we make friends and enemies as dictated by the illusory energy. Dhruva Maharaj therefore said, Daivim Mayam Upashritya. The cause of his bewilderment was his association with the illusory material energy. Text 34. It is very difficult to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in my case, although I have satisfied the Supersoul of the whole universe, I have prayed only for useless things. My activities were exactly like treatment given to a person who is already dead. Just see how unfortunate I am, for in spite of meeting the Supreme Lord, who can cut one's link with birth and death, I have prayed for the same conditions again. Purport. Sometimes it so happens that a devotee engaged in the loving service of the Lord desires some material benefit in exchange for this service. This is not the proper way to discharge devotional service. Out of ignorance, of course, sometimes a devotee does so, but Dhruva Maharaj regrets his personal behavior in this connection. Text 35. Because of my state of complete foolishness and paucity of pious activities, although the Lord offered me His personal service, I wanted material name, fame, and prosperity. My case is just like that of the poor man who, when he satisfied a great emperor who wanted to give him anything he might ask, out of ignorance, asked only a few broken grains of husked rice. Purport. In this verse, the word swarajam, which means complete independence, is very significant. A conditioned soul does not know what complete independence is. Complete independence means situation in one's own constitutional position. The real independence of a living entity who is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to remain always dependent on the Supreme Lord. Just like a child who plays in complete independence, guided by his parents who watch over him. The independence of the conditioned soul does not mean to fight with the obstacles offered by Maya, but to surrender to Krishna. In the material world, everyone is trying to become completely independent, simply by fighting against the obstacles offered by Maya. This is called the struggle for existence. Real independence is to be reinstated in the service of the Lord. Anyone who goes to the Vaikuntha planets or Goloka Vrindavan planet is freely offering his service to the Lord. That is complete independence. Just contrary to this is material overlordship, which we wrongly take to be independence. Many great political leaders have tried to establish independence, but due to such so-called independence, the people's dependence has only increased. Memo to Trump. Oh, that wasn't in the text. That was just me. The living entity cannot be happy trying to be independent in the material world. One has to surrender, therefore, unto the lotus feet of the Lord and engage in his original, eternal service. Dhruva Maharaj regrets that he wanted material opulence and greater prosperity than that of his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. His begging from the Lord was just like a poor man's asking a great emperor for a few grains of broken rice. The conclusion is that anyone who is engaged in the loving service of the Lord should never ask for material prosperity from the Lord. The awarding of material prosperity simply depends on the stringent rules and regulations of the external energy. Pure devotees ask the Lord only for the privilege of serving Him. This is our real independence. If we want anything else, it is a sign of our misfortune. Text 36. The great sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, persons like you, who are pure devotees of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can offer liberation, and who are always attached to the honey of His lotus feet, are always satisfied in serving at the lotus feet of the Lord. In any condition of life, such persons remain satisfied and think they never ask, and thus they never ask the Lord for material prosperity." Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that He is the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor of everything and anything within this creation, and the supreme friend of everyone. When one knows these things perfectly, he is always satisfied. The pure devotee never hankers after any kind of material prosperity. The karmis, however, or jnanis and yogis, endeavor always for their own personal happiness. Karmis work day and night to improve their economic condition. Jnanis undergo severe austerities in order to get liberation. And the yogis also undergo severe austerities by practicing the yoga system for attainment of wonderful mystic powers. A devotee, however, is not interested in such activities. He does not want mystic powers, or liberation, or material prosperity. He is satisfied in any condition of life, as long as he is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The Lord's feet are compared to the lotus, wherein there is saffron dust. A devotee is always engaged in drinking the honey from the lotus feet of the Lord. Unless one is freed from all material desires, he cannot actually taste the honey from the Lord's lotus feet. One has to discharge his devotional duties without being disturbed by the coming and going of material circumstances. This desirelessness for material prosperity is called nishkama. One should not mistakenly think that nishkama means giving up all desires. That is impossible. A living entity is eternally existent, and he cannot give up desires. A living entity must have desires. That is the symptom of life. A living entity must have desires. That is the symptom of life. When there is a recommendation to become desireless, it is to be understood that this means that we should not desire anything for our sense gratification. For a devotee, this state of mind, nishpriha, is the right position. Actually, every one of us already has an arrangement for our standard of material comforts. A devotee should always remain satisfied with the standard of comforts offered by the Lord, as stated in the Ishopanishad. Tena tyaktena bunjita. Over here there's a seat for you in the corner. Just, it's got your name on it. Hare Krishna. Haribol, nice to see you. Haribol. Actually, every one of us already has an arrangement for our standard of material comfort. See, there's a chair waiting for her. She needed to look at her. She fits right in, right? There you go.
Living proof of Srimad-Bhagavatam.
Living proof. A devotee should always remain satisfied with the standard of comforts offered by the Lord, as stated in the Ishopanishad. Tena tyaktena bunjita. This saves time for executing Krishna consciousness. And we might want to point out that sometimes Krishna, even if one isn't asking for anything, gives a person more than they can need or handle. So it's not that just because you don't want anything, you don't get anything. Krishna gives whatever we actually need for our service. Text 37. When King Uttanapad heard that his son Dhruva was coming back home, as if coming back to life after death, he could not put his faith in this message, for he was doubtful of how it could happen. He considered himself the most wretched, and therefore he thought that it was not possible for him to attain such good fortune. So this was Uttanapad speaking, not Dhruva. Is it? Yes. Because he went to see Uttanapad.
Yes.
Yes, this was Uttanapad speaking. Sorry, I made a mistake. You'll forgive me. I know you will. It's your nature. Okay. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj, a 5-year-old boy, went to the forest for penance and austerity, and the king could not at all believe that a small boy of such a tender age could live in the forest. He was certain that Dhruva was dead. He therefore could not fix his faith in the message that Dhruva Maharaj was coming back home again. For him, this message said that a dead man was coming back home, and so he could not believe it. After Dhruva Maharaj's departure from home, King Uttanapad thought that he was the cause of Dhruva's leaving, and thus he considered himself the most wretched. Therefore, even though it was possible that his lost son was coming back from the kingdom of death, he thought that since he was most sinful, it was not possible for him to be so fortunate as to get back his lost son. Text 38. Although he could not believe the words of the messenger, he had full faith in the word of the great sage Narada. Thus he was greatly overwhelmed by the news, and he immediately offered the messenger a highly valuable necklace in great satisfaction. Text 39 and 40. Then King Uttanapad, being very eager to see the face of his lost son, mounted a chariot drawn by excellent horses and bedecked with golden filigree, taking with him many learned brahmanas, all the elderly personalities of his family, his officers, his ministers, and his immediate friends. He immediately left the city. As he proceeded in this parade, there were auspicious sounds of conch shells, kettle drums, flutes, and the chanting of Vedic mantras to indicate all good fortune. 41. Both the queens of King Uttanapad, namely Suniti and Suruchi, along with his other son, Uttama, appeared in the procession. The queens were seated on a palanquin. Purport. After the departure of Dhruva Maharaj from the palace, the king was very afflicted, but by the kind words of Saint Narada, he was partially satisfied. He could understand the great fortune of his wife Suniti, and the great misfortune of Queen Suruchi, for these facts were certainly very open in the palace. But still, when the news reached the palace that Dhruva Maharaj was returning, his mother, Suniti, out of her great compassion and due to being the mother of a great Vaishnava, did not hesitate to take the other wife, Suruchi, and her son, Uddama, on the same palanquin. That was the greatness of Queen Suniti, the mother of the great Vaishnava, Dhruva Maharaj. Text 42, 43. Upon seeing Dhruva Maharaj approaching the neighboring small forest, King Uttanapad, with great haste, got down from his chariot. He had been very anxious for a long time to see his son Dhruva, and therefore with great love and affection he went forward to embrace his long-lost boy. Breathing very heavily, the king embraced him with both arms, but Dhruva Maharaj was not the same as before. He was completely sanctified by spiritual advancement due to having been touched by the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 44. Reunion with Dhruva Maharaj fulfilled King Uttanapad's long-cherished desire, and for this reason he smelled Dhruva's head again and again, and bathed him with torrents of very cold tears. Purport. By nature's way, when a man cries, there may be two causes. When one cries in great happiness upon the fulfillment of some desire, the tears coming forth from the eyes are very cold and pleasing, whereas tears in times of distress are very hot. Text 45. Then Dhruva Maharaj, the foremost of all nobles, first of all offered his obeisances at the feet of his father, then was honored by his father with various questions. He then bowed his head at the feet of his two mothers. Purport. It may be questioned why Dhruva Maharaj offered his respect not only to his mother, but also to his stepmother, due to whose insults he had to leave home. The answer is that after achieving perfection by self-realization and seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, Dhruva Maharaj was completely freed from all contamination of material desire. Feelings of insult or honor in this material world are never perceived by a devotee. Lord Chaitanya therefore says that one has to be humbler than the grass, and he recommends more tolerant than the tree to execute devotional service. Dhruva Maharaj therefore has in this verse been described as Suj Janagrihi, the foremost of noble men. The pure devotee is the noblest of all, and he has no feelings of animosity towards anyone. Duality due to animosity is a creation of this material world. There is no such thing in the spiritual world, which is the absolute reality. Text 46. Suruchi, the younger mother of Dhruva Maharaj, seeing that the innocent boy had fallen at her feet, immediately picked him up, embracing him with her hands, and with tears of feeling she blessed him with the words, "My dear boy, long may you live." Text 47. Unto one who has transcended qualities due to friendly behavior with the Supreme Personality, unto one who has transcendental qualities due to friendly behavior with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all living entities offer honor, just as water automatically flows down by nature. Purport. The question may be raised in this connection, why Suruchi, who was not at all favorably disposed towards Dhruva, blessed him, "Long may you live." which means that she also desired good fortune for him? The answer is given in this verse. Since Dhruva Maharaj was blessed by the Lord due to his transcendental qualities, everyone was bound to offer him all respects and benediction, just as water, by its nature, flows downward. A devotee of the Lord does not demand respect from anyone, but wherever he goes, he is honored by everyone throughout the whole world with all respect. Srinivasacharya said that the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan are respected throughout the entire universe because a devotee, having pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of all emanations, automatically pleases everyone, and thus everyone offers him respect. Text 48. The 2 brothers, Uttama and Dhruva Maharaj, also exchanged their tears. They were overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love and affection, and when they embraced one another, the hairs on their bodies stood up. Text 49. Suniti, the real mother of Dhruva Maharaj, embraced the tender body of her son, who was dearer to her than her own life, and thus forgot all material grief, for she was very pleased. Text 50. My dear Vidura, Suniti was the mother of a great hero. Her tears, together with the milk flowing from her breasts, wet the whole body of Dhruva Maharaj. This was a great, auspicious sign. Purport. When deities are installed, they are washed with milk, yogurt, and water, and this ceremony is called Abhishek. In this verse it has been especially mentioned that the tears which flowed down from the eyes of Suniti were all auspicious. This auspiciousness of the Abhishek ceremony performed by his beloved mother was an indication that in the very near future, Dhruva Maharaj would be installed on the throne of his father. The history of Dhruva Maharaj's leaving home was that his father refused to give him a place on his lap, and Dhruva Maharaj determined that unless he got the throne of his father, he would not come back. Now this Abhishek ceremony performed by his beloved mother was an indication that he would occupy the throne of Maharaj Uttanapad. It is also significant in this verse that Suniti, the mother of Dhruva Maharaj, is described as Virasu, a mother who produced a great hero. This is Virasu, very nice. A mother who produced a great hero. There are many heroes in the world, but there's no comparison to Dhruva Maharaj, who was not only a heroic emperor of this planet, but also a great devotee. A devotee is also a great hero because he conquers the influence of Maya. When Lord Chaitanya inquired from Ramananda Roy about the most famous man in this world, the latter replied that anyone who is known as a great devotee of the Lord is to be accepted as the most famous. Text 51. The residents of the palace praised the queen. Dear queen, your beloved son was lost a long time ago, and it is your great fortune that now he has come back. It appears, therefore, that your son will be able to protect you for a very long time, and will put an end to all your material pangs. Text 52. Dear Queen, you must have worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who delivers his devotees from the greatest danger. Persons who constantly meditate upon him surpass the course of birth and death. This perfection is very difficult to achieve. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj was the lost child of Queen Suniti, but during his absence, she always meditated upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was able to rescue his devotees from all dangers. While Dhruva Maharaj was absent from his home, not only did he undergo severe austerities in the forest of Madhuvan, but at home also his mother prayed to the Supreme Lord for his safety and good fortune. In other words, the Lord was worshipped by both the mother and the son, and both were able to achieve the supreme benediction from the Supreme Lord. The word Sudurjayam, an adjective which indicates that no one can conquer death, is very significant. When Dhruva Maharaj was away from his home, his father thought that he was dead. Ordinarily, a king's son, only 5 years old and away from home in the forest, would certainly be supposed dead. But by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only was he saved, but he was blessed with the highest perfection. Text 53. The sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, when everyone was thus praising Dhruva Maharaj, the king was very happy, and he had Dhruva and his brother seated on the back of a she-elephant. Thus he returned to his capital, where he was praised by all classes of men." Text 54. The whole city was decorated with columns of banana trees containing bunches of fruits and flowers. There were also many gates set up, which were structured to give the appearance of sharks. Makara. You know, I heard Prabhupada once say that actually, I heard Gopi Prananam say that actually Makara is not actually a shark. It's another aquatic animal that we haven't seen. Different shape. But for lack of another shape, they translate it as shark. Shark-shaped earrings. I skipped half a sentence? Where?
After the fruit and trees.
Okay, I'll go back and do it again. This is text 53. Oh wait, 54. I got a little static there by the Makara. Sorry. Translation. That's why you have to have a fact checker with you. When you imagine doing the whole thing without making one mistake. Yeah, that's what we're doing in the morning, reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then when I finish Chaitanya Charitamrita, I'll do the Bhagavatam without making one mistake. Hare Krishna. Text 54. Translation. The whole city was decorated with columns of banana trees containing bunches of fruits and flowers, and betel nuts with leaves and branches were seen here and there. There were also many gates set up, which were structured to give the appearance of sharks. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Purport, every syllable, it said. Right? Sanatana Goswami said, every syllable pours forth flood of prema, so we don't want to miss one syllable when I speak of a sentence. Purport. Auspicious ceremonies with decorations of the green leaves of palms, coconut trees, betel nut trees, and banana trees, and fruits, flowers, and leaves are an age-old custom in India. Hare Krishna Nitya. To receive his great son Dhruva Maharaj, King Uttanapad arranged a good reception, and all the citizens very enthusiastically took part with great jubilation. Text 55. At each and every gate there were burning lamps and big water pots decorated with differently colored cloth, strings of pearls, flower garlands, and hanging mango leaves. Text 56. In the capital city, there were many palaces, city gates, and surrounding walls, which were already very, very beautiful. And on this occasion, all of them were decorated with golden ornaments. The domes of the city palaces glittered, as did the domes of the beautiful airplanes which hovered over the city. Purport. Regarding the mention of airplanes here, it is suggested by Srimad Vijayadvaj Tirtha that on this occasion, the demigods from higher planetary systems also came in their airplanes to bestow their blessings on Dhruva Maharaj on his arrival at the capital of his father. It also appears that all the domes of the city, palaces, as well as the pinnacles of the airplanes, were decorated with ornamental work in gold, and being reflected by the sunshine, they were all glittering. We can observe a specific distinction between Dhruva Maharaj's time and modern days, for the airplanes in those days were made of gold, whereas at the present moment, airplanes are made of base aluminum, and now it's what, composite or something, some kind of plastic. This just gives a hint of the opulence of Dhruva Maharaj's days and the poverty of modern times. Text 57. All the quadrangles, lanes, and streets in the city, and the raised sitting places at the crossings were thoroughly cleansed and sprinkled with sandalwood water, and auspicious grains such as rice and barley and flowers, fruits, and many other auspicious presentations were scattered all over the city. Text 58, 59. Thus, as Dhruva Maharaj passed on the road, from every place in the neighborhood, all the gentle household ladies assembled to see him, and out of maternal affection, they offered their blessings, showering him with white mustard seed, barley, yogurt, water, newly grown grass, fruits, and flowers. In this way, Dhruva Maharaj, while hearing the pleasing songs sung by the ladies, entered the palace of his father. Text 60. Dhruva Maharaj thereafter lived in his father's palace, which had walls bedecked with highly valuable jewels. His affectionate father took particular care of him, and he dwelled in that house just as the demigods live in their palaces in the higher planetary systems. Text 61. The bedding in the palace was as white as the foam of milk, and was very soft. The bedsteads were made of ivory, with embellishments of gold, and the chairs, benches, and other sitting places and furniture were made of gold. Text 62. The palace of the king was surrounded by walls made of marble, and many engravings made of valuable jewels like sapphires, which depicted beautiful women with shining jewel lamps in their hands. Purport. The description of King Uttanapad's palace depicts the state of affairs many hundreds and thousands of years ago, long before Srimad-Bhagavatam was compiled. Since it is described that Maharaj Dhruva ruled for 36,000 years, he must have lived in the Satya Yuga, when people lived for 100,000 years. If Brahma was his great-great-grandfather, it had to be. The life durations in the 4 yugas are also mentioned in the Vedic literature. In the Satya Yuga, people used to live for 100,000 years. In the Treta Yuga, people lived for 10,000 years. In the Dwapara Yuga, they lived for 1,000 years. And in this age, Kali Yuga, people may live up to 100 years. With the progressive advance of each new yuga, the duration of human life is reduced by 90%, from 100,000 to 10,000, from 10,000 to 1,000, and from 1,000 to 100, and counting downwards. It is said that Dhruva Maharaj was the great-grandson of Lord Brahma. This indicates that Dhruva Maharaj's time was in the Satya Yuga, in the beginning of creation. During one day of Brahma, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, there are many Satyugas. According to the Vedic calculation, at the present moment, the 28th millennium is current. It can be calculated that Dhruva Maharaj lived many millions of years ago, but the description of the palace of Dhruva's father is so glorious that we cannot accept that advanced human civilization did not exist even 40 or 50,000 years ago. There were walls like those in the palace of Maharaj Uttanapad, even very recently, during the Mughal period. Anyone who has seen the Red Fort in Delhi must have marked that the walls are made of marble, and once decorated with jewels. During the British period, all these jewels were taken away and dispatched to the British Museum. The conception of worldly opulence was formerly based mainly on natural resources, such as jewels, marble, silk, ivory, gold, and silver. The advancement of economic development was not based on big motor cars. Advancement of human civilization depended not on industrial enterprises, but on possession of natural wealth and natural food, which is all supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that we may save time for self-realization and success in the human form of body. Another aspect of this verse is that Dhruva Maharaj's father, Uttanapad, would very soon give up attachment for his palaces and would go to the forest for self-realization. From the description of Srimad-Bhagavatam, therefore, we can make a very thorough comparative study of modern civilization and the civilization of mankind in other millenniums, Satya, Treta, Yuga, and Dwapar Yuga. Text 63. The king's residence was surrounded by gardens, wherein there were varieties of trees brought from the heavenly planets. In those trees, there were pairs of sweetly singing birds and almost mad bumblebees, which made a very relishable buzzing sound. Purport. In this verse, the word Amara Drumahai, with trees brought from the heavenly planets, is very significant. The heavenly planets are known as Amaraloka, the planets where death is very much delayed, because the people there live for 10,000 years, according to the calculations of the demigods, in which our 6 months are equal to 1 day. The demigods live in the heavenly planets for months, years, and 10,000 years of years according to demigod time. And then again, after the result of their pious activities are exhausted, they fall down to this earth. These are the statements that can be collected from Vedic literature. As the people there live for 10,000 years, so also do the trees. Of course, here on this earth, there are many trees which live for 10,000 years. So what to speak of the trees on the heavenly planets? They must live for more than many 10,000s of years. And sometimes, as practiced even now, some valuable trees are taken from one place to another. It is elsewhere stated that when Lord Krishna went to the heavenly planets with his wife Satyabhama, he took a parijata flower tree from heaven and brought it to the earth. There was a fight between Krishna and the demigods due to the parijata trees being taken from heaven to this planet. The parijata was planted in the palace of Lord Krishna, which was occupied by Queen Satyabhama. The flower and fruit trees in the heavenly planets are superior, for they are very pleasant and tasteful. And it appears that in the palace of Maharaj Uttanapad, there were many varieties of such trees. Text 64. There were emerald staircases which led to lakes full of variously colored lotus flowers and lilies, and swans, karandavas, chakravakas, cranes, similar other valuable birds were visible, and similar other valuable birds were visible in those lakes. Purport. It appears that not only was the palace surrounded by compounds and gardens with varieties of trees, but there were small man-made lakes also, where the water was full of many-colored lotus flowers and lilies. And to get down to the lakes, there were many staircases made of valuable jewels, such as emeralds. By the beautifully positioned garden houses, there were many luxuriant birds, such as swans, chakravakas, karandavas, and cranes. These birds generally do not live in filthy places like crows do. The atmosphere of the city was very healthy and beautiful. It can simply be imagined from its description. Text 65. The saintly king Uttanapad, hearing of the glorious deeds of Dhruva Maharaj and personally seeing also how influential and great he was, felt very satisfied, for Dhruva's activities were wonderful to the supreme degree. When Dhruva Maharaj was in the forest executing his austerities, his father, Uttanapad, heard everything about his wonderful activities. Although Dhruva Maharaj was the son of a king and was only 5 years old, he went to the forest and executed devotional service under strict austerity. Therefore his acts were all wonderful, and when he came back home, naturally, because of his spiritual qualifications, became very popular amongst the citizens. He must have performed many wonderful activities by the grace of the Lord. No one is more satisfied than the father of a person who is credited with glorious activities. Maharaj Uttanapad was not an ordinary king. He was a Rajarshi, a saintly king. Formerly this earth was ruled by one saintly king only. Kings were trained to become saintly. Therefore they had no other concern than the welfare of the citizens. These saintly kings were properly trained, and it's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita also. The science of God, or the yoga system of devotional service known as Bhagavad Gita, was spoken to the saintly king of the sun planet, and gradually it descended through the Kshatriya kings who were generated from the sun and the moon. If the head of government is saintly, certainly the citizens become saintly, and they are very happy because both their spiritual and physical needs and hankerings are satisfied. Text 66. When after concentration King Uttanapad saw that Dhruva Maharaj was suitably mature to take charge of the kingdom, and his ministers were agreeable, and the citizens were also very fond of him, he enthroned Dhruva as emperor of this planet. Purport. Although it is misconceived that formerly the monarchical government was autocratic, from the description of this verse, it appears that not only was King Uttanapad a Rajarshi, but before installing his beloved son Dhruva on the throne of the entire world, he consulted his ministerial officers, considered the opinion of the public, and also personally examined Dhruva's character. Then the king installed him on the throne to take charge of the affairs of the world. When a Vaishnava king like Dhruva Maharaj is the head of the government of the entire world, the world is so happy that it is not possible to imagine or describe, especially nowadays. Even now, if people would all become Krishna conscious, the democratic government of the present day would be exactly like the kingdom of heaven. If all people became Krishna conscious, they would vote for persons of the category of Dhruva Maharaj. If the post of chief executive were occupied by such a Vaishnava, all the problems of satanic government would be solved. The youthful generation of the present day is very enthusiastic in trying to overthrow the government in different parts of the world. But unless people are Krishna conscious, like Dhruva Maharaj, there will be no appreciable changes in government, because people who hanker to attain political position by hook or by crook cannot think of the welfare of the people. Wow. I mean, how prescient is this? Huh? How prescient is this? They are only busy to keep their position of prestige and monetary gain. They have very little time to think of the welfare of the citizens. Getting a little glimpse of why Srila Prabhupada had this plot to distribute these books in mass and uplift and educate people spiritually, so they wouldn't, do such a thing as they're doing nowadays, putting certain men in power. Text 67. After considering his advanced age and deliberating on the welfare of his spiritual self, King Uttanapad detached himself from worldly affairs and entered the forest. Purport. This is a sign of a Rajarshi. King Uttanapad was very opulent and was emperor of the world, and these attachments were certainly very great. Modern politicians are not as great as kings like Maharaja Uttanapad, but because they get some political power for some days, they become so much attached to their positions that they never retire unless they are removed from their posts by cruel death or killed by some opposing political party. It is within our experience that the politicians in India do not quit their positions until death. This was not the practice in olden days, as it is evident from the behavior of King Uttanapad. Immediately after installing his worthy son, Dhruva Maharaj, on the throne, he left his home and palace. There are hundreds and thousands of instances like this in which kings, in their mature age, would give up their kingdoms and go to the forest to practice austerity. Practice of austerity is the main business of human life. As Maharaj Dhruva practiced austerity in his early age, his father, Maharaj Uttanapad, in his old age, also practiced austerity in the forest. In modern days, however, it is not possible to give up one's home and go to the forest to practice austerity. But if people of all ages would take shelter of the Krishna consciousness movement and practice the simple austerities of no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, and no meat eating, and chant the Hare Krishna mantra regularly, 16 rounds, by this practical method, it would be a very easy task to get salvation from this material world. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 9th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Returns Home. Okay, we'll end the reading there tonight. One beautiful description of Dhruva Maharaj returning from the forest and what real affection is, even in family life in this material world, if people are spiritually advanced. And we'll turn the bumblebee over to anyone who wants to reflect on something that they've heard, or discuss it further, or question, or whatever. All right. Hannah's got something to say.
It's rare, I know. It's said that the Earth planet is more favorable for attaining Krishna Prema or pure devotional service because of shorter lifespans and grosser circumstances. My question is whether there is also a specific age that is more favorable for perfection of the human form of life.
No.
Yes. Actually, it is said that the planet Earth in Kali Yuga is so favorable that even the demigods on the higher planets are standing in line to take birth on Earth in Kali Yuga. And the reason is, well, one is the short duration of life. You can go back to home, back to Godhead very quickly. But the special facility is the chanting of the holy name. In Srimad-Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami says to Maharaj Parikshit, Kalo Doshani Di Rajan, that this Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. I mean, one might think Kali Yuga is not a good time. He says, Kalo Doshani Di Rajan, Aki Heestu Mahagunan, but there is one great quality of this age. Kirtanad eva Krishnasya mukta sangha parambraja. Just by Krishna Kirtan, one can become liberated from all material association and attain the supreme destination.
Oh, I thought she was talking about the physical age of a person, but you just took it.
Oh, is that what you meant?
No, I meant ages.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the age of picture physical.
I said no.
Because Dhruva Maharaj was 5. And you get liberation at any time. I was saying, no, there's no particular age. You can become Krishna conscious in any age, physical age of a person. And you can also get Krishna consciousness in any age, any kind of age. But it's particularly easier in this age, as Maharaj has so nicely explained. What else?
So how long did the Maharaj stay as 5 years old? Is it comparable to a year nowadays, or it's kind of an esoteric question?
Well, we've heard that, I mean, this is definitely in Satya Yuga. In the Satya Yuga, the lifespan was 100,000 years. But still, a person lived a year of their time. It was a year. So, in 5 years, he lived his 5th year, 1 year. But that 1 year is calculated to be every 6 months. 1 day is 6 months. Calculated from our time on the earth, it would be a lot longer. But since he went to Madhavan forest on the earth, I think you could say that it was
1 year.
1 year. Correct. Uncle John, got something over there.
I was just going to comment on how at his early Dhruva Maharaj, in like kind of an early stage of development, he was very accomplished. He caught the attention of Krishna, but then he got further, I guess, advanced when he started to realize that his stepmother wasn't his enemy and his stepbrother was his friend. And so it's like, he even got a greater realization, but it was he didn't. Nobody ever told him, "Oh, you're not all that because you haven't reached this level yet." It's like he just kind of grew in him, and it's kind of like with us, the further we get along in Krishna consciousness, to realize that, wow, I thought I knew something, but I really didn't until my awareness gets, our awareness gets greater. So that's just a little realization. Thank you.
That was brilliant, Uncle John. Brilliant. How long have you been reading these books?
A couple of months with you, that's it.
Couple of months. This is what happens when you read these books. Even just for a couple of months, you can say something like that. So why should we be so surprised that a person of Dhruva Maharaj's position can? This brilliant, wonderful thing you just said. And yeah. The mystic quality of advancing in spiritual life is that the more you advance, the less advanced you think you are. And the pinnacle of spiritual advancement is Srimati Radharani. She's the pinnacle of spiritual advancement because she's Krishna's energy, pleasure energy. So she's not different than Krishna, but still, she's the perfect devotee of Krishna. And what does she think? She thinks that everyone is a devotee except for her.
We read that. Here it says that the devotee sees no difference between one who's
Yeah, it's the same way. It's another way of saying the same thing as what we heard in the purports. Yeah. So, humility, there's Sanatana Goswami in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita describes that there's a level of humility that one can achieve by one's own endeavor, by trying to be, austere and careful with your dealings of others and so many things. But there's a level of humility that cannot be achieved by any other method of receiving special mercy from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The name of it in Sanskrit is called dainya. And in that dainya, it is the prerequisite for achieving Krishna prema, or love, pure love for Krishna. And it can only be received or attained by the mercy of the followers of Srimati Radharani in the spiritual world. And in that degree of humility, one thinks oneself incredibly unqualified, but what the person doesn't just sit over in the corner and feel bad about himself and doesn't do anything because he's so humble. In other words, Sanatana Goswami comments that it's not that level of humility is attained by poverty or engaging in sinful activities and becoming wretched and just unqualified to do anything. Rather, the person who has dainya feels, humble because he's realizing Krishna more and more, and the more you realize Krishna, the more closer you get to Krishna, then the more you realize how great Krishna is and how tiny you are in relation. And even if it's in Goloka, sometimes we hear that
we forget that Krishna is God, but that doesn't mean that we forget Krishna is the most wonderful, because everyone is, in love with Krishna fully, even if they don't have a direct family relationship with him. They all love it. Like all the ladies who have sons, they love Krishna more than their sons, etc., etc. So, we can't actually realize who we are until we realize who Krishna is. And to the extent that we realize who Krishna is the extent to which we can realize who we are.
Hey, Krishna Maharaj. That's true. In fact, it's funny that discussion was being discussed when I was coming here. When someone does come to the realization that God is who He is, whether it's as a small child or as they grow as an adult, it's really the heart of the person. Because if a person doesn't know where good is coming from, he's never really going to see God, because he's looking in the wrong place. To one who does know his assignment and place in this world, it's a good privilege. And to be in front of people that are used by Krishna closer, where they're not in white, that's a good feeling. And I just want to give honor what honor is due. Thank y'all. I've come here off and on, but I've made point to be here last week to hear more and more. Y'all are very nice vessels that shine. And I thank y'all. Thank y'all.
It's a little. I'm trying to connect a few dots. In terms of that, you were my ears picked up when you read about the different types of tears, the tears of pain, the tears of ecstasy. Talking about in terms of the levels of love, like the tears and the experience of what Srimati Radharani experiences when she's in that feeling. Is there a difference between the pain or the tears that one feels out of humility and the tears one may feel out of love?
This is a very interesting question. Can I say one thing and then hand it over to you?
Say as much as you
I wanted to hand it over to you, but I just related to that same section from the Bhagavatamrita that I was quoting from. And there's in that one purport, and there's a verse right after that purport that I just read, that I just remembered, where it says that dainya is, how can dainya be a result of prema if prema is everything? And the answer to the question is that dainya is prerequisite of prema, and so dainya and prema actually have a causal and effectual relationship with one another, and therefore they're considered to be the same. In other words, a person can't have prema without dainya, and a person that actually has prema has dainya.
What was the question?
Is there a difference between the tears or the ecstasy and pain ecstasy that one feels in humility and in prema?
Well, as Maharaj said, the two are very closely related. And I don't know if it would be correct to say that it's painful.
This feeling of separation, like
Oh,
yeah,
like tears of separation?
tears of his humility stems from realizing how fallen he is. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, humility is related to separation because one feels that the cause of the separation is one's disqualification or unqualification. And that was exhibited by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's also in the mood of Srimati Radharani. But that's actually good. You know, on the transcendental platform, meeting and separation are the same. They're both ecstasy. And Brihad Bhagavatamrita gives the example of fire and ice. That when ice is very cold, it burns. Like dry ice, it burns. So when the separation becomes very intense, just like intense cold becomes hot, so the separation becomes meeting.
And the pinnacle of that manifestation is manifested when the devotee, and this is only very rare devotees, like Srimati Radharani and the queens of Krishna. I think they're the only ones that can actually experience this fully. But they will feel an anticipation. They're with Krishna, and they're feeling the anticipation that Krishna's going to leave. And in the anticipation, they start to feel separation while they're with Krishna. And it becomes so intense that Krishna disappears. They can't see Krishna anymore, even though he's right there.
So he manifested.
Yeah, it's called Prem Bichitta. Prem Bichitta. It's a very intense feeling. And for that reason, Lord Chaitanya taught that devotional service with a feeling of separation is actually the most intense experience of prema or love. Whereas we think just the opposite. We think to be with the beloved is the most feeling, and being apart is suffering. In this way, the spiritual world and the material world are perverted reflections. I mean, the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. But these feelings and that level of experience is far from us at this time. We may hear about it and we may appreciate it, but it's very far away, and it takes, like I said before, it takes very special bestowing of mercy. It means one has to be selected. Of all the living beings, very, very, very few attain that state of love. And but Lord Chaitanya came, as Maharaj said, to bestow love of God upon anyone, without considering whether they're fit or not. It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable. And that's why this movement's spreading all over the world, because of that tsunami that Lord Chaitanya started 500 years ago. And it will continue to spread at least for 4,500 more years until it becomes at the peak of its influence in the world. So a lot of things can change in that amount of time. So welcome aboard. Yes, Matthew. And then.
Yes, my question is about the demigods. I've heard that they like have the Srimad-Bhagavatam with many more verses and like a deeper understanding of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. But why were the demigods so reluctant to give charity to like those trees that were from the heavenly planets that they didn't want to give up? Are they not able to receive any more pious credit from their position?
They're too attached. That's the difference between the demigods' level of attachment and their opulence is so great. They're very attached. Therefore, they become jealous. Therefore, they're trying to, as Maharaj said, they're lining up to take birth on the earth in the Kali Yuga so they can get Krishna Prema.
Because we're ending now. You can't leave.
Maharaj, I have to sleep away because I have to get up really early.
Are we continuing on?
Just say one thing. About the extraordinary mercy of Lord Chaitanya in Kali Yuga, that he gives the highest achievement to the lowest of people. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares Lord Chaitanya to a king who is intoxicated, and he goes into his treasury and he takes out the most precious jewels, and he goes out onto the street and gives them to the most fallen beggars. He is the king and he possesses those jewels, so he can do with them whatever he wants. In his intoxicated state, he takes the most precious of his jewels and gives them away to the most fallen. That's our good fortune. Hare Krishna.